Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is Silicon Valley billionaire Chamath absolutely eviscerates the Democrat politicians in California, exposing numerous bills that they denied that would have prevented this.
I'm not very sympathetic to there were 100-mile-an-hour winds, not because it's not true, but there's been enough modeling that we know that these kinds of outlier weather events are happening in greater and greater frequency. Remember that crazy apocalyptic video of that exact same part of Southern California in 2018 burning to the ground? Can we just look at that, all of us collectively? Because that was 6 years ago. In the 1950s, the average amount of timber, so wood that was harvested in California, was around 6 billion board feet per year. In the intervening 70 years, that shrank to about 1.5 billion board feet. And so you'd say, okay, well, that's a 75% reduction. We must be making a very explicit stance on conservation. It turns out that that's not entirely true, because what it left behind was nearly 163 million dead trees. Dead, like gone. And so you would say, well, those things should have been removed. And the problem is that then there's this California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, and a whole bunch of these other regulatory policies that limited the ability of local governments and fire management to clear these dead trees and vegetation. And I think that that's a really big deal. And when you double click on that, here's where you find the real head scratcher. Okay? Multiple bills, AB 2330, AB 1951, AB 2639, all rejected by the Democrat-controlled legislature, or worse, vetoed by Governor Newsom, that would have exempted these wildfire prevention projects from CEQA and other permitting issues. Then there were other bills to try to minimize the risk of fires by burying power lines underground, SB 1003 as an example. Went nowhere, didn't even get to the governor's desk. So I'm just a little bit at a loss to explain these two bodies of data.
So you have 130 million dead trees acting as an accelerant anytime a fire occurs. Any attempt to give these cleanup operations exemption from these wild environmental regulations are shut down. Putting these power lines underground so they stop catching trees on fire or falling down and spreading fires was also rejected. Money for the water reservoirs that was allocated 10 years ago hasn't been used, so it's safe to say it's effectively been stolen from the taxpayer. What more evidence do the people need to see that their politicians failed them because they were just concerned with unserious things? It's bewildering to me that these politicians think it's unreasonable for the people to want to hold them accountable for this disaster. I mean, in a private business, if you miss a deadline or send the wrong deliverable to a client, you're liable to get fired. It's only in government did the elected officials think that they can let a city burn to the ground, and that isn't justification for termination.